Hello and welcome to Eurogamer Retro, which is not to be confused with DF Retro, which is an intelligent and in-depth look at video games gone by. No, this one is a lot more lowbrow, I'm afraid. Anyway, I'm Eurogamer's Ian Higton, and recently I've got back into collecting Spectrum games in a big way, and in one of my most recent hauls I stumbled across a copy of this. It's the TV Showtime box set, and I was instantly drawn to it thanks to the rather incredible box art. And by incredible I obviously mean terrifying. Packaged inside the box are 5 video game adaptations of classic game shows for the ZX Spectrum, including Bullseye, Bob's Full House, Krypton Factor, Every Second Counts and Blockbusters. Anyway, I was expecting them all to be pretty crappy, and as you'll soon see, I wasn't half wrong. Bob Monkhouse is a British TV legend. One of his shows, Bob's Full House, was loosely based on a game of bingo and would often pull in audiences of over 15 million people per episode. But to be fair, that was before Netflix and YouTube were invented, so I'm not sure it would be able to hit those numbers nowadays. Still, the show had a respectable innings running from 1984 through to 1990, and Domark, a well-known software house from back in the day, released a home computer version of the show for the Speccy, Amstrad and C64 in 1988. But to be honest, after giving it a go myself, I can safely say Bob deserved better. Things start off pretty badly for Bob's Full House with this recreation of the show's logo for the Spectrum's loading screen. On it, a crude drawing of Bob appears no less than 5 times. Each pixelated face is identical, but Bob's normally cheerful grin seems to have been replaced by some kind of malevolent sneer. It's the kind of look you'd expect to see on someone's face just before they bashed your head in with a shovel and buried you in their crawl space. Once the game is finally loaded, we're treated to a title screen that contains not just 5, but 20 of these murder bobs. Slightly smaller murder bobs this time round, but still, the artist has done a great job of maintaining maximum evil within such a small amount of pixels. If you thought Bob's face was scary in the loading screen though, wait until you see it in motion in-game. A large portion of the screen is dedicated to an animated murder Bob whose face flinches and ticks as he reads out each question to the players. Sometimes you'll catch a little glimpse of the nice Bob Monkhouse in there, but most of the time it just looks like he's trying out for Linda Blair's role in The Exorcist.
Bonjour. Quoi nomen mihi est?
La plume de ma tante.
How long are you planning to stay in Reagan?
Until she rots and lies stinking in the earth.
But anyway, that's enough focus on Murder Bob, because you're probably dying to know how the game actually plays. Well, it's a straight fingers-on-buzzers style game split into a few different rounds, but the aim in each is the same. Players must press their buzzer as quickly as they can if they know the answer to a question. If they get it wrong, they are wallied, which basically means they skip a go. If they get it right, they can fill in a square on their bingo board, fill in all the squares, and you get a full house and win the game. The questions themselves are not particularly tricky though, and unforgivably for a quiz game, they are frequently repeated, meaning it's potentially pretty easy to memorise them all and ace the game every time. Oh, and you can't just quickly choose an answer. There's this whole laborious process of having to physically type in your guess, which on a rickety +2 keyboard at least is a little bit of a pain. Still, I managed to win on my first go, and by doing so I was able to claim my prize. A choice between a lovely watch, a Casio keyboard, and a holiday to somewhere that looks like it has a black hole for a sun and the ghosts of palm trees past on its beaches. I picked the holiday, of course, and I'm sure it'll be very relaxing. That is, as long as Murder Bob doesn't try to come along with me.
It burns! Oh, it burns!
I've got to admit, I never watched Every Second Counts when it was on, or at least I don't remember it if I did. This game show, presented by pint-sized magical man Paul Daniels, pitted 3 teams of married couples against one another in a bid to 1. Win prizes and 2. Not get divorced. probably. The loading screen for every second counts is pretty good, to be honest. The logo is faithfully recreated and the colours are a perfect fit for the Spectrum's limited palette. The title screen music seems to be a random composition though, but the music for the stings between rounds is a pretty accurate representation of the jingle played when Paul introduces the contestants onto his show. So far so good. Once you've chosen and loaded one of the 5 blocks of questions, the first thing you'll need to do is pick your married couple from this lineup of incredibly 80s haircuts. Now, should I pick the side parting, or the side parting, I wonder? Now, obviously, like the show, you're supposed to play this game with a partner, but my girlfriend has better things to do with her time, so I had to play with myself as usual. Wait, what? Gameplay-wise, every second counts is rather simplistic. There's 3 true or false rounds, punctuated with some general knowledge bonus rounds, and a final round that tasks you with picking the correct answer out of a possible 3 choices. The questions themselves are pretty easy to answer thanks to the 50-50 true or false nature of it all, and I thought the Paul Daniels magic or tragic spin on round 3 was a nice touch and in keeping with the spirit of the television show. The trouble is, it's all pretty dull. There's no real sense of achievement here, and when the final round is over, that's it. The game just ends. No crappy pictures of crappy prizes, no fanfare, no nothing. Just a quick well done, and then straight onto the credits. All in all, this isn't actually that bad of an adaptation of the TV show. It's just a pity that it's so short. I mean, I was able to complete the game in just over 5 minutes on my first ever go, which is hardly magic, is it? Still, every second counts, I guess. Did you know that there are actually 4 different adaptations of mighty British game show Blockbusters made for the ZX Spectrum? That's how popular Bob Holness and his little tea time game show was. The version included in this box set is the only one published under the TV Games label. A company called Maxon Software published the rest. It was the last ever Blockbusters game to be released on the Spectrum, and by all accounts, it's the laziest version of them all. Stick the tape in the specky and you'll be treated to 2 different loading screens. The first a so-so copy of the show's opening credits that boasts, in tiny writing in the middle of a really shitty attempt at a star, that it's all new, a reference, I'm guessing, to the other, better Blockbusters games that came before it. The second loading screen isn't really a loading screen at all. It's basically the game board just with nothing actually on it. At first I thought the game had crashed, but no, it's just one of many examples of how lazy this game is. I mean, just check out this feeble attempt at the Blockbusters theme tune. That's it, and that's all the sound you'll get in Blockbusters as well, except for a couple of blips and blops here and there. Honestly, no expense was spared in half-arsing this game out of the door. Anyway, on to the main event. Once you've entered your name, the board will fill up with random letters, each one corresponding to a certain question. Answer enough questions to connect one side of the board to another, and you win. Standard Blockbusters. For the duration of each game, there's a rather nice animated likeness of Bob Holness on screen. It's probably the best thing about this game, and it's a lot less creepy than Murder Bob from Bob's Full House. I'm not exactly sure what he's doing though. I think he's supposed to be reading the questions, but it just looks like he's headbanging to some hardcore Norwegian black metal or something. As a fun aside, in between games it's possible to turn Bob on or off with a simple press of the B button, but as tempting as it is, I think I'll let you make your own jokes up for that one. Although this game did manage to pull off a fairly decent simulation of the core Blockbusters mechanics, the complete lack of flair robs it of any nostalgic charm that it could have had for me, which is a shame because the TV show is a real classic. Still, at least it gave me the chance to ask Bob if I could have a pee. I guess that's as good as it's gonna get. You don't get more British than a game show about the noble sport of darts. Bullseye, presented by Jim Bowen, ran for a staggering 14 years, and most people in the UK will instantly recognise the iconic theme tune and the show's morbidly obese mascot, Bully the Bull.
It's a Bullseye!
Here's Bully himself in the Spectrum version of Bullseye, looking a little bit derpy, while a terrible rendition of the show's theme tune plays out behind him. Although Bully looks pretty special here, he doesn't look half as bad as he does on the loading screen. I guess you've got to give whoever drew this image a tiny bit of credit for at least having a go at recreating the TV show's title screen, but to be honest, this Bully is nightmarish. Sure, he doesn't look that great normally with his beer belly and his gap-toothed gorp, but here it looks like he's suffered from some kind of terrible head injury. That's not the face of someone aiming for a treble 20, that's the face of someone begging to be put out of their misery. Harrowing. Anyway, if that wasn't enough of a warning that this game is a terribly shoddy adaptation, check this out. This is a game that's based on a TV show about darts, but still, somehow, whoever made it spelled Oki wrong. Like, seriously, how does an error that blatant not get spotted before the game is released? It's spelled O-C-H-E, not the way they've spelt it here. Christ. For a family game show game, the questions in Bullseye are surprisingly tough as well, and are easily the most difficult out of the 5 games on this list. I selected easy mode, but even then the majority of the questions that popped up were incredibly tricky. I mean, when has Who Danced for the Head of John the Baptist ever been considered an easy question? Except for maybe at pub quiz night in Vatican City. But before you can get round to answering any questions, you've first got to select a subject, and doing that involves one of, if not the worst simulation of dart throwing in any game ever. It's just all so basic. You position the throwing hand below where you want the dart to land, and then hold down space to increase the strength of the throw. The more you fill the bar, the further up the board the dart lands. Release space and a crude representation of a dart will plop onto the board like a wet bogey that someone's flicked at the screen. There's no sound to signify the landing, no animation of the dart in flight, just an anticlimactic mark on the board and a dull ache of regret in the pit of your stomach. Endure the game long enough to win, and in keeping with the rest of the game, the payoff is pure pants. I hope you weren't expecting something flashy, because all you get is a picture of Bully's thumb that is so amateurish a child could have drawn it, and a message that states "good arrows" before it asks you if you want to play again. Finally, a question that's easy to answer. Be under no illusions. Bullseye is neither super, smashing, nor great. It's just straight up bullshit. The final game on this list is the biggest of them all, and it's not really surprising considering the game show it's based on. The Krypton Factor, which first broadcast in 1977, didn't just test its contestants' mental prowess, it also tested their physical attributes, observational skills, and much, much more in a series of rock-hard rounds designed to find what they called a super person. Anyway, the specky version kicks off with a dull-as-ditchwater loading screen, but things get a bit more interesting when the game launches and it starts pumping out a theme tune that seems solely designed to melt your brain. It's nothing like the show's theme tune, so perhaps the composer was just having a little breakdown and this was his cry for help. The Krypton Factor boasts the best character selection screen out of all the games featured, and gives the player some huge digitised portraits to choose from. Each character has their own bios, like Diane, a 33-year-old hairdresser from Glasgow, but you can also edit them to include your own info if you don't feel like a spot of role-playing. The 6 rounds that follow show ranges of variety not seen in the other TV Showtime titles, but even though there's a lot more to do, the rounds themselves really are quite terrible. First up is Mental Agility, a simple Simon remember the numbers type game with a twist that I got completely wrong because I didn't bother reading the instructions. The observation round is next, and after sitting through a loading screen you're treated to a mind-numbing and incredibly tricky round of Spot the Difference. It takes over a minute for a dull story about a shop assistant to slowly scroll across the screen, and then you have to read it all over again whilst trying to spot any changes to the text. While that's going on, you'll also need to memorise the picture above because again, the second time round, there'll be subtle differences to spot. It's actually really hard, not least because it's tricky to concentrate when you're bored off your tits. Again, I did rubbish, but look, if I flick between the pictures, you can see how tiny the changes you're meant to spot are. Surely even Sherlock Holmes would have trouble with this nonsense. Following on from that nightmare is the response round. Again, I hadn't read the instructions at this point, so I just mashed the keys a la Daley Thompson's super test. It seemed to work out okay though, because I got to the end without my fingers falling off, so that's a bonus, I guess. There's more loading before the physical ability test, aka the legendary Krypton Factor obstacle course. Except this is the opposite of legendary, which I presume is forgettable? I don't know. Anyway, your character auto runs up the course, and by pressing certain keys you can assign power to your legs, arms, strength and stamina depending on what obstacle is being attempted. To be honest, it didn't really feel like my changes were affecting that much, but still this was probably the most interesting round out of them all. Next up was the intelligence round. It's a kind of slider puzzle thing, but not. I mean, I thought it was, but then it wasn't, and then the timer ran out and I lost. So let's just say it's lucky I'm so good looking, because intelligence-wise, I'm not so hot. So, how did I do in general knowledge, the final round of the Krypton Factor? Well, we'll never know, because the game crashed as it loaded that section, and there was no way I was putting myself through that 30-minute ordeal again. In summary, the Krypton Factor is long, hard and broken, and I never want to play it again. It was one of the better games in this box set, but really, that's not saying much at all now, is it? So that's it, 5 crappy games based on classic British game shows. Now, if you'd like to see any more retro topics covered, do let me know in the comments below, because I'd like to make Eurogamer Retro a regular series. Now, the time has come for me to go all blurry and sit here while you pick another video to watch. I'd suggest this one up here, but you could also watch this one. I wouldn't watch this one right here because Chris is in it and it's a bit rubbish. But whatever you do, don't forget to like and subscribe before you go. Goodbye!